What makes a fantasy world immersive? Is it deep and intricate lore that makes the readers dive into wikis and ponder the details? Or is it light, accessible lore that lets the story flow without overwhelming them? I would argue that the answer lies somewhere in between these two questions. And that's what I want to talk about today. Exploring what is deep lore, what is shallow lore, and when to use each effectively in your world building. Welcome to the first episode of Just in Time World series on building deep fantasy lore with your host, Marie Mullaney. Creating a fantasy world is an art of contrasts, where the creator must constantly navigate between the intricate and the broad, the detailed and the sketchy. Two of the most essential elements in this craft are what we refer to as deep lore and shallow lore. Deep lore, for the purpose of this video, is where you go deep in your definition of the world. It's a culture where you define everything from the festivals they celebrate to the history of those festivals to the day-to-day technologies that they use and how those have developed. Deep lore is the rich, intricate backstory that gives your world a sense of history, depth, and authenticity. It's the kind of lore that can make a world feel ancient, filled with layers of culture, mythology, and forgotten histories. When done well, deep lore can immerse your audience, allowing them to get lost in the nuances of your world, where every name, place, and event carries weight and significance. On the other hand, shallow lore serves a different but equally important purpose. From the reader's perspective, it provides just enough information to keep the story moving, offering a glimpse into the world without overwhelming the reader with detail. Shallow lore helps to establish the world in broad strokes, creating a framework that supports the narrative without bogging that story down with excessive exposition and intricate details. From the world builder's perspective, shallow lore is the place where you haven't defined the world in full. You know what's there, roughly, but you haven't shaded every corner and colored every edge. There's space in shallow lore for more world building should you need to do it. Let's take a look at George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire for an example of both deep and shallow world building. The continent of Essos, with its vast expanse and diverse culture, is painted with relatively broad strokes compared to Westeros. In Essos, the lore is often shallower, offering enough detail to make it feel real and lived in, but not so much that it slows down the narrative. We get glimpses of the free city, the Dothraki Sea, and the mysterious lands beyond, but these places are not explored with the same depth as the Seven Kingdoms. For example, in Westeros, we know enough about what they eat to fill a whole cookbook. There is literally an official cookbook on Westeros. This is absolutely not the case in Essos, where the only meal that springs to mind, for me at least, is raw horse heart, which Dany eats in a ritual in the Dothraki city. But this shallow approach to world building works for the Essos storylines because Essos serves as a backdrop to the main events, which are all deeply rooted in Westeros. Westeros is steeped in deep lore, detailed histories of noble houses, complex political machinations, and a sense of the land's ancient past and people. The depth in Westeros is crucial because this is the heart of the story of A Song of Ice and Fire. And Martin wants the readers to feel the weight of history that exists in Westeros on every page. That's why we have enough of the history of Westeros to make a whole TV show with it. And Essos is only vaguely defined in terms of the impact it has on Westeros. The only parts of Essos' history that we have is where it actually affected Westeros. You can see the same kind of balancing act in The Wheel of Time, where Robert Jordan introduces us to a myriad of different nations and cultures, but some, like the Seachan, are explored with far more depth than others. This is because the Seachan play a critical role in the overarching plot, much like Westeros does in A Song of Ice and Fire. Others don't, so they get a much lighter treatment. Now, obviously, I don't have access to these authors' world-building notes as such, so I'm speculating on how shallowly they built, but speaking for myself and how I world built for Sangwheel Chronicles, I also had deep lore and shallow lore. The Empire of Lumiaron, where Chronicles takes place, I have history. I have multiple waves of immigration that changed the empire. I have the way that those cultures interacted and the impact that it had on their languages. I had which cultural habits survive to today and the impact that prehistorical grave construction had on the cities of the empire and the tunnels they created below some of the cities. I have the imbalance that magic created in their societies and how that affected their cultures and how that resulted in their current government. Basically, for the empire, I have reams of details because the empire is the main setting for Chronicles. On the other hand, I have another empire on the southern continent called the Empire of Imovin. And over there, I have a very, very, very short entry that just says, based on the Hittite Empire, very formal court culture, deep emerald mine, mages are controlled via manacles and training, religion is a derivative of the threesome, where the relationship between the gods are described as friendship rather than that of lovers. And that's it. It's a shallow definition of the lore of the Empire of Imovin because that's all I need right now. That will change when I start writing Sangwheel Tales, which is my next series in this world, because one of the characters in Sangwheel Tales will be from Imovin in that series. But for now, Imovin remains nice and shallow, while the Empire of Lumiaron is very deep. And this raises an important question for any world builder. How do you decide when to dive deep and create detailed lore, and when to keep things shallow and accessible? How do you ensure that your world feels rich and engaging without overwhelming your audience with too much information? So personally, I like to use the golf ball method of world building, which is a model that I defined for myself, which I'm going to share with you now. And if you're finding this video useful and interesting, please do give it a thumbs up so I know to keep creating more content like this. And let's talk about golf. So what you want to do is you want to start off with your world as a smooth ball covered in shallow lore, broad strokes that gives it shape. And then as the plot moves through the world, it creates dimples of deep lore in areas where the story needs more details. For instance, you might initially just sketch out a remote mountain area with a name and a single line of history. This is shallow lore. But if a point of view character comes from that region, you'll develop customs, religion, and history specific to that area because it's relevant to the character's background. The beauty of the golf ball model lies in its flexibility. It allows you to start with a broad, shallow foundation, ensuring that your world is cohesive and easy to grasp without the need to overload readers or yourself with information from the outset. Then, as the plot dictates, you can selectively deepen the lore in specific areas, creating a world that feels both richly detailed and narratively focused. For details on how to create that first shallow world, check out my Getting Started video from Worldbuilding Blueprints. And that will guide you through how to create that first outset of the world. Now, this kind of golf ball model can also help you to not overwhelm your readers with too much information, as they too can start with the world as a shallow world, and then gradually, as your plot dips into these separate narratives, they can explore the deeper lore. Another advantage of the golf ball model is that it encourages dynamic and organic development of your world. Because the deep lore is developed in response to the needs of plot, it ensures that every detail you add serves a purpose. This helps maintain the pacing of your narrative, as the story isn't bogged down by unnecessary exposition and you're not bogged down by unnecessary world building. For example, if your story involves a journey across several lands, you don't need to delve into the detailed history of each region unless the plot demands it. Most regions can remain part of the broad, shallow background, with only those directly impacting the story receiving the dimple treatment. But how do you know when the narrative really needs to be dimpletized? I have 4 guidelines that I like to use in my world building process to determine where I need to go deep and where I can stay shallow. 1. Go deep when it drives the plot. This is one of the most important reasons to delve deep into the lore. If there's a specific aspect of your world's history, culture, or magic that is crucial to the events unfolding in your story, it is definitely worth taking the time to flesh these out in detail. For example, if there's a long forgotten prophecy or a historical conflict that is key to your protagonist's quest, you must deepen the lore around these elements to add layers of meaning and tension to your narrative. Where does the prophecy come from? Who made it? Has it been preserved? Or maybe you have a magical item that plays a critical role in the unraveling plot of your world. The history of that item should certainly be part of your deep lore, because the more you know about that item, the more effectively you can weave it into your plot and raise your reader's understanding of your world. Remember, deep lore is most effective when it enhances the reader's understanding of the story's stakes. And if you need some help creating the history of such items, check out my video on creating the history of your world in the information card. Rule 2. Go deep when it shapes character development. Deep lore can also be essential when it informs the development of your characters. If a character's backstory, motivations, or personal beliefs are closely tied to specific cultural practices, religious beliefs, or historical events in your world, providing more detail in these areas can make the character's journey much more compelling. For instance, one of the aspects of Essos that is well defined in A Song of Ice and Fire is the history of the Targaryens. This deep lore is vital to understanding not just Dana Race's identity and her claim to the Iron Throne, but also the history of her house and their relationship to the rest of the duchies of Westeros, including the impact of her father, the Mad King, on the kingdoms and on Dany herself. So, when it's important to a main character of your story, make sure you go deep in developing the parts of your world that impacts their history, their identity, and their arc. 3. Go deep when you want to subvert reader assumptions. Every reader comes into your world with their own set of assumptions and default settings based on their life, culture, and understanding of real-world history. They assume that your world matches their default assumptions unless you explicitly show them otherwise through world building. When you want to subvert their expectations by introducing a unique twist on a familiar trope, or by revealing that things are not as they seem, or by dramatically altering something about our world through your fantastical elements, it is important to lay the groundwork with deep lore. This might involve developing an unexpected political system, or a hidden magical tradition, or a surprising historical revelation that turns the reader's assumptions on their head. So some piece of history that was impacted so deeply by the fantastical elements of your world that it entirely altered the fabric of the cultures of your world. By going deep in these instances where you are making these alterations and upending the reader's assumptions, you can ensure that your twists or your differences with our world feel rich in the context of your world, rather than coming across as a gimmick. This is especially important with elements like gender roles or commonly understood political concepts like kings and the feudal liege systems. Readers have expectations created by history and fantasy. If your world is not like ours in terms of its historical development, which it shouldn't be, make sure you know where that is and why that is by going into deep lore around those changes. For instance, did magic change history? Did the impact of magic entirely alter the world? Or did society simply develop in different ways because of different historical events? Were there some historical events that created a culture that has no equivalent in our world, or a political system that we've never seen in our world? Whatever shaped your world, make sure you understand that and can show it to your reader in your deep lore. 4. Go deep when it enhances immersion. Sometimes deep lore is necessary simply to create a sense of immersion and wonder. When your story takes the reader to a completely alien culture, a mysterious ancient ruin, or a pivotal moment in history, investing in deep lore can make those elements feel real and come alive. A great example of this is J.R.R. Tolkien's Worldbuilding, with its detailed creation of myths and linguistic histories. The Silmarillion may not be necessary to enjoy The Lord of the Rings, but it certainly contributes to the overall sense of depth and reality in Middle-earth. When your goal is to transport the reader to another world, deep lore can be one of your most powerful tools in those moments. And of course, you have to create it before you can write it to show the reader. The long and the short of it is this. Deep lore and shallow lore are both essential tools in the fantasy writer's arsenal. Deep lore gives your world depth and history, while shallow lore keeps the story moving and accessible. The art lies in knowing when to use each, creating a world that feels both rich and engaging without overwhelming the readers. I hope this episode helped you understand when to build deep and when to keep things nice and shallow on your golf ball. In the next episode in the series, we'll look into how to create those dimples of deep lore by examining the creation of inflection points in the history of a culture. Those points where everything about your world could change from our world. So make sure you're subscribed for when that drops. As with most of my videos, this episode is made possible by the support of my members, and you too can become a member. By joining, you'll not only get early access and exclusive tips, but you'll also be joining a community of fellow world builders where we can share ideas and grow together. And a very special thanks to Tiffany, Dylan, Aya, and Patricio, just-in-timers of the Build It in Wood level, and also to Katie and Tony, just-in-timers of the Build It in Stone level. But you don't have to contribute financially to support the channel. You can also help me just by commenting below or watching another video. And if you enjoyed this video, maybe check out my video on how to turn real-world history into fantasy lore, or any of the other videos on the screen right now. And I will see you soon for another episode of Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need when we need it.